Over the past few years, when we spoke about Europe's most valuable company, we only spoke about one name, LVMH. The luxury giant controls over 75 high fashion brands. Their dominance of the luxury market has earned them a market cap in the hundreds of billions of euros, and for a while a top spot on Europe's list of most valuable companies. Then things suddenly changed when a little known Danish pharmaceutical company suddenly blazed past them. Novo Nordisk's rapid growth started in 2023 when it was discovered that one of its drugs, Wegovy, not only reduced weight loss but reduced the risk of heart attacks and strokes by 20%. The discovery changed the drug from a lifestyle medication into a life-saving treatment. Nearly overnight, medical insurance companies were now liable to cover the cost of the drug to millions of customers. That single change in coverage added roughly $60 billion to Novo's market cap in a day. But this rapid rise wouldn't last too long. Over the past few years, both Novo Nordisk and LVMH have experienced a slowdown in sales and in some cases a decline, which led to the ascension of SAP to the top of the rich list, becoming Europe's first ever tech company to occupy the top of its most valuable companies list. In a world where tech innovation is dominated by the United States and China, SAP stands as a rare example of a European tech giant and one of Europe's few hopes for technological sovereignty. This is the story of SAP, Europe's answer to Silicon Valley, and possibly Europe's last hope for AI sovereignty, as it faces conquering forces from the East and the West. The story of SAP begins in the Cold War in West Germany with these 5 men. In the late 60s, they were engineers for the German subsidiary of IBM. At the time, one of IBM's mainframe computer competitors was deciding to bow out of the mainframe market. Xerox had been manufacturing mainframe computers during this period, but the market was brutally competitive and it was mostly dominated by IBM, so they made the tough decision to pull the plug on their hardware business and refocus the entire company on what they did best, which was copiers and document technology. To handle its exit from the mainframe computer business, Xerox turned, ironically, to its biggest competitor, IBM. Xerox essentially asked IBM to take its existing business systems and move them over to IBM's mainframe. This was a massive migration project. A group of 5 IBM engineers would be part of the team tasked with handling the Xerox migration. The 5 engineers began working on an enterprise-wide system based on Xerox technology, but IBM would decide to put an end to their project. The 5 engineers saw an opportunity. Rather than abandoning their project, in 1972, they left IBM and founded SAP. Their first client was the German branch of Imperial Chemical Industries, for which they developed mainframe programs for payroll and accounting. The system stored data locally in an electronic system while using a common logical database for all activities of the organization. This was an incredible innovation because in the early 1970s, most business computing worked on batch processing, which meant you'd have to collect data throughout the day, often on punch cards, then feed it all into the computer overnight and get your results the next morning. It was slow, clunky, and meant you were always working with yesterday's information. SAP system, on the other hand, processed data as it came in real time. The software had the power to overhaul business operations and transform enterprises into far more efficient organizations. By 1975, after just 2.5 years, SAP had over 40 customers. Word was beginning to spread through German industry about their revolutionary software. 1979 would prove to be a pivotal year with the launch of the SAP R2, which expanded beyond financial accounting into areas like materials management and production planning. By 1981, R2 had achieved enough stability that SAP extended its customer base to approximately 200 companies inside and outside Germany. In 1992, they released their next-gen product, R3. Its predecessor, R2, ran on expensive mainframes that only big corporations could afford. R3 was built in a completely different architecture. Instead of one giant mainframe, you could run it on networks of smaller, cheaper servers connected to desktop PCs. This opened SAP to a much wider market. In the space of 1 year, from 1992 to 1993, the percentage of SAP America's total revenue generated by R3 catapulted from 5 to 80%, and R2 collapsed from 95% of revenue to just 20%. SAP essentially cannibalized its own flagship product overnight to make way for the next generation of its business. This is when SAP began to make serious inroads into the US enterprise software market. By the mid-1990s, SAP had gone from a relatively unknown company to becoming the business application vendor of choice for 9 of the 10 largest US corporations, 1/3 of the Fortune 500 and 80% of the Fortune 100 companies. Among the firms using SAP were America's most iconic corporations such as Microsoft, Coca-Cola, General Motors, and IBM. Then the internet wave came. By the late 1990s, the internet was reshaping everything. The dot-com boom was creating a new generation of nimble, web-native competitors. For its own part, SAP launched mysap.com. The idea was to make SAP internet-enabled, allowing employees, customers, and suppliers to collaborate across company boundaries online. But MySAP wouldn't fare well. Although MySAP was a web-based system, underneath the hood lay a different reality. The products were not built for the web and were incredibly difficult to use compared to the much simpler, built only for the web systems its young internet competitors had. SAP's saving grace would come in the form of one of the global economy's worst events, the bursting of the dot-com bubble. When it popped in the early 2000s, all those lightweight web startups that were supposed to replace SAP simply vanished as the funding dried up and most internet startups went bankrupt, including a great deal of SAP's competitors. After barely surviving the dot-com era, SAP found itself in a fierce war with Oracle over the dominance of the enterprise software market. Oracle, under Larry Ellison, went on a massive acquisition spree, buying PeopleSoft, once SAP's biggest competitor, then Sizable Systems, and over 25 other companies. Interestingly, SAP software ran on Oracle databases, meaning Oracle was simultaneously a partner and a bitter rival. SAP shot back at Oracle by acquiring a company called Tomorrow Now in 2005, which provided cut price support for Oracle's legacy customers. The idea was to lure Oracle's customers over to SAP by offering them cheaper maintenance. It backfired spectacularly. In March 2007, Oracle sued SAP, accusing it of fraud and unfair competition. SAP admitted that its employees of Tomorrow Now had downloaded more information than they should have about Oracle customers. In November 2010, a US district court ruled that SAP had to pay Oracle $1.3 billion for corporate infringement, which became one of the largest copyright damages awarded in corporate history. But Oracle wasn't SAP's only worry. The bursting of the dot-com bubble hadn't killed off everyone. One plucky little startup had survived and was now posing a threat to SAP. Salesforce was founded on March 8, 1999 by a former Oracle executive, Mark Benioff. Benioff had a radical pitch. Software shouldn't be something you buy, install, and maintain. It should be something you simply access over the internet and pay for it monthly. Initially, nobody at SAP took Salesforce seriously. But what SAP missed was that Salesforce wasn't trying to replace SAP. It was rewriting the rules of how software gets sold and delivered. Traditional SAP implementations took months or even years and required armies of consultants. A company could spend $50 million in 2 years just getting SAP up and running. With Salesforce, on the other hand, you signed up on a website, paid per user per month, and you were live within minutes. By 2016, Salesforce had established itself as the world's leading CRM provider, with 18% of the global market, a substantial lead over Oracle at 9.4% and SAP at just 7.2%. Then in 2022, for the first time in the company's history, Salesforce overtook SAP in quarterly revenue, putting the once scrappy startup on the same level as a company that was one of Europe's oldest and most important tech giants. Before this point, SAP had already seen the writing on the wall, realizing that it had to transition to a cloud-based business model or face extinction. In the 2010s, SAP went on an acquisition spree, totaling over $20 billion in acquisitions. Up until then, SAP had been slow to react to the rise of enterprise cloud computing and SaaS applications like Salesforce, but it began course correcting by going on a cloud application buying spree. In addition to acquisitions, SAP built an extensive cloud platform. The cloud platform was built to meet all the needs of its existing clients who had bought its on-premise software products. But there was a problem, and it was big. For decades, SAP's customers had spent years and hundreds of millions of dollars customizing their SAP system to fit their exact business processes. A car manufacturing SAP looked nothing like a pharmaceutical company's SAP. These installations had become deeply bespoke, woven into the very fabric of how these companies operated. And moving to the cloud meant standardization. All those beautiful, expensive customizations were not going to transfer easily into a standardized system. Estimated migration costs for such an undertaking ranged from as little as $2 million for smaller companies to as much as $1 billion for the largest enterprises, with estimated transition times being 3 to 7 years. SAP set an ambitious deadline of 2027 to transition all its customers to the cloud. The aggressive push for cloud migration paid dividend. SAP's cloud revenue began growing at staggering rates, 25% to 28% year over year. By 2025, cloud revenue had hit 17 billion euros. The stock responded accordingly. SAP's market capitalization soared past $340 billion in March of 2025, making it not just Europe's largest technology company, but Europe's most valuable company entirely. But just as quickly as SAP rose is as quickly as it declined. The popular assumption up until then was that SAP's cloud boom was primarily driven by its massive installed base of legacy customers migrating to the cloud, except for the fact that only 39% of SAP's 35,000 legacy ERP customers had even begun their transition to the cloud, and the larger, more complex organizations, the ones representing the biggest revenue opportunities, were disproportionately among the holdouts, and that was the key issue. The market was pricing in the transition of SAP's biggest and most lucrative clients to the cloud. Once the initial enthusiasm for early adopters and eager transitioners died down, what remained was a company caught in two worlds. A world of legacy on-premise software it had dominated for decades, and a cloud world it was trying to steward its future towards. Following its peak as Europe's largest company, SAP experienced a sharp decline, so deep that it technically isn't even Europe's most valuable tech company either. That title now belongs to ASML. The stark turn in fortunes poses an even bigger challenge for SAP and Europe at large. As we all know, AI is the defining industry of our decade, with trillions of dollars being poured into it. But the money is not spread equally. In the AI arena, there are only really two players, the United States and China. On the hardware side, the war is already over. America dominates through its near monopoly on advanced AI chip design, with companies commanding market valuations larger than the GDP of most European nations. China, on the other hand, despite crippling export restrictions, has poured staggering state-backed resources into building its own semiconductor ecosystem, mounting a serious effort to catch up to America's chip supremacy. As for Europe, it doesn't even have a horse in this race. Europe's only hope for being a critical part of the AI ecosystem solely rests on the software side of the industry, with SAP being its only real hope. SAP, through its ERP and other software offerings, sits on incredibly important data. Data on how companies pay their suppliers, manage their workforce, close their books, and forecast their futures. Every large language model in Silicon Valley and China can write poetry and generate images. By training an AI to actually run a multinational corporation procurement process or predict cash flow disruptions accurately across 30 countries, that requires the kind of deep, structured real-world business data that only SAP possesses at scale. But having an advantage and being able to exploit it are two very different things. And this is where Europe's structural problems threaten to strangle SAP's AI ambitions before they even get off the ground. Start with the market itself. The United States is a single market of over $28 trillion in GDP, governed by one federal legal system, one language, one set of accounting standards, and one regulatory philosophy. That, for all its flaws, generally prioritizes speed and innovation over precaution. China is an $18 trillion economy with centralized state direction that can mobilize resources towards strategic technologies with a speed and scale that no other nation can match. On paper, the European Union has created unified frameworks designed to harmonize regulation across the bloc. In practice, Europe remains a patchwork of 27 member states, each with its own legal traditions, its own labor laws, its own tax codes, and its own interpretations of what EU regulations actually mean at the national level. What America and China each offer as a single unified market of enormous scale, Europe offers as a fragmented maze of regulatory complexity that dramatically increases the cost, time, and risk of deploying any technology, let alone one as sensitive and fast-moving as artificial intelligence. To add to the complexity, SAP must navigate all of this while simultaneously fighting a war on two fronts. The cloud transition has been fraught with challenges consuming immense amounts of capital and engineering talent, while at the same time, SAP's cloud competitors in Silicon Valley have seemingly endless capital and resources. Similarly, on the AI front, SAP's American rivals like Microsoft, Google, Amazon, and Meta can pour tens of billions of dollars into AI projects, and Chinese tech giants enjoy extensive state backing with near endless national resources at their disposal. SAP is spending its money and its people trying to convince reluctant customers to migrate off 30-year-old on-premise systems. For comparison, SAP invests roughly 18% of its revenue in research and development, a significant commitment by any means, but 18% of 35 billion euros is approximately 6 billion euros. Microsoft spent more than that on AI alone in a single quarter in 2024. Think of the bigger picture. SAP's AI race is about more than the company. It's about Europe as a whole. Because if SAP fails to establish itself as a credible AI player, Europe will have no sovereign technology company of global scale operating under European legal jurisdiction, answerable to European courts, and aligned with European values. This sets the stage for a potential future where every piece of critical business infrastructure, the systems that run Europe's manufacturers, banks, hospitals, energy grids, and governments, will be controlled by American or Chinese technology. SAP is the only company that stands between Europe and that future. The AI revolution is moving faster than anything SAP has faced before. The competition is better funded than anything Europe has ever confronted, and the window to establish a position is closing with every passing quarter. SAP doesn't need to win the AI race, but it cannot afford to be irrelevant in it. And right now, trapped between a cloud transition that won't finish and an AI revolution that won't wait, Europe's most important technology company is running out of time. The next 5 years will determine not just SAP's future, but whether Europe has any meaningful voice in the technological order that will shape the remainder of this century. But what do you think? Will SAP survive the AI era, or will Europe find its AI tech savior somewhere else? Let me know in the comments, and thanks for watching.